Oh, today I have Jody with me here from Title Lands Professional, and Yvonne she brought with her, so they're going to be helping on the title side. And Jody, you want to introduce Yvonne to everybody?
Yvonne is our lead title officer for Arizona. So anytime we have questions that are pretty legal, let's call it, we go to Yvonne, and she is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
I keep my mouth shut. This morning, we did the deed fraud class a couple months ago, and it was a full 3 hours. We're probably not going to, we might take the whole hour, but I almost doubt it. I just wanted to share with you guys some of the newer things I'm hearing, because this kind of, the fraud thing has definitely evolved. We went from wire fraud to then we had the deed fraud, where it was just these random ones, sometimes family members, those kind of things. Now it's a whole different thing that is happening that we're hearing about with the seller impersonation and the IDs that they're creating and how they're acting as a seller and intercepting those properties and the funds. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what that looks like, and then have title explain what they look for and flags that they see and tips that they have as well. So the first thing that typically is, it's typically a vacant land or a vacant house, because it happens to the houses too. They're vacant, they're free and clear. Those are the targets typically. And for obvious reasons, they can kind of go through the process without having liens released or anything like that. And a lot of times the people that own them are not checking on them constantly. They don't see the sign of the yard or any of those kind of things. So, or on the property. So they're calling agents, they're asking them to list the property, they're giving a name that matches what you're seeing on the deed and or tax records. They're even going so far as to change the mailing address in the assessor's records online, so that if you try to send something there to confirm identity, because that was something that was being suggested for a while, it's actually going to them because they've changed the address. And again, how many owners go and check their mailing address on their tax records, those kind of things. So they're getting very creative. Couple things, a lot of times these leads are coming in online, where they started mostly with Zillow is what we had heard. They're coming in various sources now, or just outright contacting agents directly. Now they've even gone so far as they're having a fake realtor in another state call you and say, I have a referral for you. So not only are they getting it this way, then they're taking referral fees to someone else. Now, we have some checks and balances in place to some degree in terms of confirming licensing in other states, because we can only pay an active broker, which helps. However, there's a lot of agents that wouldn't do that, or brokerages that might not do that. And it would be easy for them to, they're out of state, we don't know these people, you know what I mean, to identify themselves as that other agent. So they're getting really creative and really coming in from different angles, I guess. As they kind of get caught one way, they start pivoting and trying to figure out another way to get to agents. So what they do is they go in, they provide ID that matches what you're seeing. It matches the deed. That's kind of how they get into the process. We've had 3 in our office in the last 3 months ish. Thankfully, all 3 were caught. But on the nightmare side, if it were to close, we've talked about is now you have a seller who's lost their property and the money. You have the real seller, the real owner. You have a buyer who's purchased a property that isn't really, the chain of title isn't clear really, and then so they don't really have a property, and then you have this middleman who is long gone and nobody knows who they are. So those were the challenges that happen. The things that title, as we've gone through this, we started asking for ID, or that was a suggestion, and we started checking the tax records and the mailing addresses. I mentioned they're kind of, they've solved both of those things for themselves. I was sharing with Randy, there was a situation, another broker shared with us right here in the West Valley, where they had one where the only reason it was caught was because the passport and the ID that they provided, the signatures were too exact. They had superimposed the same signature onto both documents, and nobody signs the exact same twice. but who, I mean, that was very, like, whoever caught that, I don't know that I would have caught something like that, or any of us would not. So, you know, they're just, these ideas and the things that they're creating, these forgeries are really good. They're just really good at it, unfortunately. Couple things that I wanted to mention to be careful of is a lot of times in the discussion when we're hearing about these situations and we get these calls, we'll get comments like, well, they sounded like they were from here, or maybe they had an accent from here, those kind of things. So I just want to caution you that whatever kind of personal practices you put into place to start verifying identities and that sort of thing, be very careful you don't cross that fair housing line, that you're doing that equally for all of your online leads, for example, or all of your leads, or, you know, however you're trying to identify somebody, you're just being consistent with the questions you ask and the things you ask for in terms of having them provide. So that's just a side note, because I hear those conversations a lot. And unfortunately, a lot of the times it's going out of country, so that's where it's maybe a red flag, but I would just be very careful with what you're asking there. Some of the situations we've had, just to share with you, is we had one where they contacted our agent. It was vacant land, said I want to list it. They said they were in, I believe, Mississippi. They provided all names and everything that matched up. Wasn't really a question. There were a couple of red flags on that one because it was early on. They didn't want to sign on the property because they were afraid, you know, if someone happened to see it, that kind of thing, obviously. And the agent had Googled the name and saw the age, and it didn't exactly line up with what he was hearing on the phone and the technology skills and that sort of thing. So he dug a little further and finally found what he thought might be the real owner somewhere else in another state, finally found a phone number, contacted this person who definitely sounded more like the real. They pieced it all together, and of course that was real. And in the tell pieces, as soon as in all three instances we've had, my suggestion to the agent was tell the person who's contacting you, this fraudulent person, tell them we have a concern with ownership and we're going to pause everything. For just, you know, just put a TOM or whatever the situation was. And it's amazing how they just go radio silent, gone. You never hear from them again. As soon as they think you're onto them, they're on to the next. In all three situations, they moved on immediately to an agent the next day. I mean, they were already on the line trying to get someone else, because in the first one we had, the very next day, an agent called our agent and said, hey, I noticed in MLS that you had this listed. Can you tell me what happened? I'm getting ready to put it on the market. So they had already moved on right away. In the one we had with
Well, you gotta find me, right?
sorry. We have been named here, sorry. There's a picture a little bit about it, but very similar circumstances. Again, the ironic piece of this is that the real owner in this case happens to be the past client of one of our other agents, and saw the property come up online and said, why is my house, or why is my land active? What are you doing? We weren't ready yet. I mean, just it could have been anybody. We just got lucky, and that's how we determined it wasn't the right owner, or the real owner as well. So
I'm questioning.
yeah.
Is there anything we could say differently so we can get them to the proper authorities so they just don't do it to somebody else?
So we're going to talk about that. There's some title flags that we're doing. That they're doing, I guess, on the title side. There's some things that they're doing to put some checks in on that. We're also, so the challenge.
If we just
I'll back
state
up.
that, then they disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
And the challenge is, at that point, other than impersonating somebody, they haven't taken anything. There's no damages. They haven't done anything yet. So even turning those into the AG's office, we're turning them in. However, it's not like they can be charged with a whole lot yet, and they're really not going to chase them for that part, if that makes sense. So, and it's happening so much.
Wow.
Really, the only reason we're all turning them in as early, and they're recommending we turn them in, is so that they can try to see if they can catch some patterns, or the same people, or the same groups, that kind of thing, or if they've taken it further. So what I was mentioning was, there were some tips to send like a certified letter to the address on assessor site. Again, they're now changing that address, so that's not really working.
I'm just gonna, on that really quick, on the address, there is nothing that gets sent to the current owner saying that the address has changed. You type it in, I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, you type
It's just
it
an
in,
update.
you hit submit, it's done. They don't send anything, they don't notify anybody, it's that simple for somebody to do. No, and that's one of the things that something needs to be
Yeah.
done with the
Yeah.
county.
And I do
But
think
you
that,
can check this, his address is send something there. Is that what you
I
mean?
don't think you can. It's
Oh.
because it's changing on. It's just on
The old address is gone.
the mailing address.
The mailing address, yeah.
So, they've suggested Google alerts to owners to set up a Google alert on regular address properties, I'm gonna call them, that's helpful, because if someone does list it, you would get a notification. On land, it's a little tough, I think you guys know, we put them in by APN number sometimes, we list them by, XX West Jomax, like, sometimes it doesn't have a defined address, those kind of things, so it could be put in a million different ways, so it's not always maybe gonna get caught that way. There were suggestions, obviously now the county has set up an alert system, so I believe it's Yavapai, Canal, and Maricopa, all three have it. Is what I
That
understand.
wouldn't, are you talking about for deed transfer?
Yes, but it doesn't happen until after the fact.
For the reason that they're doing, now it's because of the deed, because the recordings trigger an alert. But now they're avoiding that by just impersonating the sellers.
Right.
Right,
So
right,
now they've eliminated deed fraud.
yeah, and by the time,
Stealing the house.
and by the time they've stolen it, that new deed is what's triggering their
Right.
alert, and that doesn't help a whole lot either.
I don't know if anybody has done that before. I actually did it on mine.
I have it on mine.
And I've actually transferred to put it into our trust. I didn't get a notification until almost 48 hours later. That it was transferred.
I got one the same day or the next day,
Really?
and I signed up one for like my mom and one for everyone that's in my little circle.
Yeah,
That way I get it.
yeah.
Kinda. Yeah, you got yours done.
And it doesn't have to be exact. I've gotten 2 alerts already, but it was like different middle initial.
Yeah,
Better than not. get it.
exactly.
How do you set up these alerts?
Um,
Just a Google
Go to
alert?
the recorder's
Maricopa.
office, find it.
Oh, okay.
I can send you the link. Lisa.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll try to look for
And those things from the county have been put in place since all of this started, just in the last couple months. So I think they're really trying to kind of get ahead of it as much as they can. They're realizing what a problem this is, or, and how ugly it can get. Backing up to some of the things that are on, you guys have the seller impersonation fraud flyer. I sent it out a couple of times, but if anybody needs it again, everybody in the room has it, but everybody online. Things like the cash buyer, the quick sale, those sometimes might be some of the comments, but sellers don't say that, you know what I mean? That's obviously the dream in most cases, but they're even in the 2 cases I can think of, that wasn't part of the conversation. It was more about not having a sign on it, that kind of thing, or the other flags otherwise. The other things that they're now recommending are you can maybe take out a HELOC, don't take out the money, but just record a lien against the property. Have it in a trust or an LLC, I think probably helps. Joe, if you guys remember Jessie, she did the deed fraud class a couple months ago. She actually suggested that if you get contacted, to go back to the previous deed that's recorded on what you can find online and call the title company who recorded that up, because a lot of times the ones they're recording aren't with the title company. They're just recording these other fake deeds, So go to the one previous, find the one that was from an actual title company that handled it, pull that title company and have them contact the original owner there, because they'll have that contact information and they've worked with them before and might have all their ID and those kind of things already. So she's suggesting to go back that way to see, because a couple of them have been caught that way.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be really motivated to make that call.
I think the title companies so here's the end, when these go ugly, and forward to answer that, I'll make a point about that. When they go ugly, in some cases, the title companies, the title insurance is paying out, first they're turning around and then potentially pursuing the agent or whoever else they feel like maybe had some negligence in there. But they're paying out enough that they're concerned. So I think I get the impression from all the title folks I've talked to, everybody's on the same board of terms of taking all these extra steps, because nobody wants to be caught in the middle of one of these at the end. They just don't. And so I'll let you guys explain what they're doing on the title side in terms of some flags. And I think First American
First
has a
American,
system.
yeah, they do have a system.
Yeah.
So if somebody would contact, if they would contact a previous title company, that title company goes to their underwriter goes and does a little bit more research, and so we have a search system, and it's called data trace, and they will, on that certain property that is had fraud already done, we will have a note on there from First American or whoever else your underwriter was, stating that this property had fraud on it.
Right.
So that then takes us the next step to make sure we are triple checking everything else, all documents, signatures.
In person. And that's the suggestion, of course, is to try to get them in person, try to confirm, and talking to the right person, try to meet with them if you can. But even on Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, something to get these people face to face, if at all possible. So to answer your question, I think everybody is pretty well.
All I've been thinking about is how can I create a system that I can monetize?
So, I think Jody gave you guys copies of this, but this is an example, and this is the first one that's been done. So I'm gonna share with you what this is. I don't know if online you guys maybe can't see this. I'll email these to you, but this is just a recorded document from an attorney. So on the one we had, that real owner that was a past client, they had, I think what had happened to them, that was the third case.
Third time that
Third
they had
time?
somebody try to sell their very expensive land.
Yeah. So, so they went and hired an attorney who recommended they hire an attorney. They had this notice, basically it's kind of a notice of fraud, if you will, on the property.
They record it?
When they recorded it. And what it says is, if everybody online can hear me, since you guys don't have copies of this yet, it basically says, notice is hereby given that the trustees of the trust are the true owners of the real property, spells it out with all the legal description, address, assessor's number. Hereby give it constructive notice that the property is not for sale as of August 1st, 2023. A party purporting to be the owner, currently residing outside of Idaho, has no authority to execute a deed, thereby transferring ownership of the property. Any future transfer of ownership to the property may be done so under the conditions of: 1, the owners present valid identification issued from the state of Idaho. A copy of all transactional documents are mailed to their address, their personal home address outside of the state. And they present a copy of the trust, and a notice of the sale is sent to this attorney. And then they recorded it. And I will tell you that from what Jesse has explained, this got kicked back. The county didn't want to record this initially. They weren't going to allow it. And then she called them, made some calls, did some digging, explained what the purpose was and why they were trying to do this. And the county was like, that's a great idea. We'll absolutely allow it. So now it's another suggestion where if you have a client who has vacant land, vacant home, this might be something they want to think about doing on their property without having to go record like a HELOC or something else that way.
As a title officer, when Jody showed me that was the first time I've ever seen it, obviously. I actually like that document a lot.
Yeah.
Because when we go to do our search, I search that property, it shows up as an agreement. And we have to handle an agreement as a contract. The only person that can release that document will be the original owners. And then obviously they would have to show their ID, their signatures would have to match. Only way that document will go away.
So I think the biggest key to that is that it's recorded. So now you're gonna look more deep at somebody's ID, whether it's a passport or a driver's
Right,
license.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I would guess that the fraudsters, I'm gonna say, are probably, because they're gonna look at, they're looking for all this stuff. They're looking for these properties. They're probably gonna see that and, yeah,
Move on.
they're gonna move on to the next one. You know,
So the cost of doing that, hiring attorneys and getting them involved to create this document is what? You said?
I should have, I thought
I don't know, I didn't ask.
I didn't
I'm
either,
just
and I thought of
curious.
that this morning. I was thinking
Yeah.
about some of that, and I should have asked her.
I just had
Do
a,
you need an attorney to create the document? Can you just record a
Well,
document?
Sure, and you can record your own quitclaim deeds and everything else, but the title companies, they're not gonna be, you're gonna want to make sure it's accurate. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
I was talking to Jody about that. I would be happy to do the release, type up the release. You don't have to go to the lawyer. But again, we would be seeing the actual owners with their ID matching the signatures. So we would record a release, but we cannot do like that type of document.
What about if that was done by a paralegal rather than an attorney, would that work? I mean, a lot of paralegals out there that are doing.
As long as it's still coming from like a law office, a lawyer's
well,
office.
the reality is, as long as it's accurate, is all that really matters. Doesn't have to be from a law office. The challenge is, when an attorney is overlooking it, that's who's, if it's a paralegal that doesn't work for an attorney, or it's somebody doing it, one of those document prep companies, I wouldn't trust.
so I just had an attorney write up a release for a listing of mine, and I think that was like $350. I wouldn't think it would be terribly expensive and then record it. The other thing I was gonna say, I heard another attorney doing something like this too, like a memorandum kind of thing. And they even went as far to say that their fingerprint card must match. Like, so they're
Okay.
requiring fingerprint.
Well, and that's a potential I'm hearing could come to Arizona and California, as I understand it, when they get notary, they have to do a fingerprint match. I hear they're looking at that here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a legislative change, so that,
Yeah.
those kind of things take time. But I do feel like I said, I feel like the county, the title companies, like, everybody knows how big this is and how often it's happening and how ugly it's been, that I feel like everybody's moving as quick as they can to
To get
put
ahead of
a
it.
stop in place as much as we can.
Do you have any idea what the count is of fraud that's been,
I heard a number, I don't remember. I feel like in one of the broker meetings, they mentioned what they thought it was, but I don't.
How many people haven't realized yet?
Right, right. Yeah, how many people don't even know yet, I mean, that's the thing, I mean, this poor guy in Colorado, that the first one we had, I mean, he again, a little technology challenge, like, I don't think he would have ever checked if our agent hadn't gone as far to reach him, and that was, I was so impressed with our agent, and he's not on here, but he really took a lot of extra care. He just had that feeling in his gut, and he's been around long enough. He just knew something didn't feel right, that he'd already put it on the market. I mean, it kind of was, and he went back and really dug in and found the right person.
Insist on putting them on the market for a year and then
Yeah.
just sit on them until you find out,
Yeah.
like, well, because you can't relist it with somebody else if it's
Right,
con somebody else. doesn't
right.
have it.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you mainly seeing it like on vacant land and vacant houses?
Yeah.
I mean, are we seeing it on occupied houses or?
I've heard of rentals.
Rentals,
I've heard
okay.
of rentals that happening on, but mostly vacant because nobody is physically checking on those often.
free and clear?
Typically free and clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
green and clear.
Yeah, the free and clear is the big key. But the vacant and an out of state owner, because then they really know they're probably not coming back and checking on that,
I had sold Canadians like 20 years ago, and I sent emails to every one that I could think of, especially because, back then they were cash buyers. And so they were very grateful. Some of them were panicky because it's not something, like you said,
Yeah.
checking their ownership. So, and it's also kind of a nice way to reconnect them,
Yeah.
give them something useful.
Yeah, it's an item of value, to your investors, your clients, your folks out of state, to keep in touch with them. It's a touch that you can make, but it's helpful. And the more word we get out to everybody, the easier it's gonna be, and hopefully this goes down. I heard of a case, I don't remember if you told me this, Jody, but I heard of a case just recently, I think it was in Connecticut where this happened. This is not just local, this is happening across the country in a big way. But I think it was in Connecticut and they actually, it was vacant land, so the new buyer buys it and then constructs a new $2 million home on the property. So imagine when it gets caught at that point.
Owners lived in
Oh.
Tennessee.
Yep.
Owners didn't want to sell the land. Now the owners are suing the title company, developer, the seller, or the buyer that bought the land.
They're mad because nobody finished their house yet.
It was like 90% complete. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous house.
Wow.
Just waiting for that last draw.
So I was hoping you guys can touch on the title insurance piece. And when there's coverage that kicks in for these things and when there's not, because my understanding is on land, everybody doesn't always do the full, like the Able policy.
full
type
policy,
thing. Yeah,
correct.
so can you guys kind of explain that for us?
So, yeah, so when it is vacant land, it's a standard owner's policy. So yes, you do lose a lot of your coverage. However, deed fraud, anything pertaining to the deed itself is covered.
Okay.
When it comes to a standard owner, that's basically what's on the land. And that is just your basic insurance. But deeds, when it comes to the warranty deeds of trust, any kind of lien on the property still, is you can file a claim. And that underwriter will, they have a claim department, they go through the whole process, and then they see where they can go.
Okay. So I had heard, and again, you guys are the title gurus on this side, but I had heard some of the challenges are, so once they start recording these subsequent deeds, that it's not forward. Like the title insurance, you know, as we all know, our title insurance is from when we own it back and before us.
Yeah.
So forward, when these things are happening, sometimes there's not coverage for that. Is that correct?
Correct. So like are you talking about if they record different types of deeds? So they put it, maybe they bought it in individuals and then they turn it into an LLC. So or a trust, or so there is a reissue policy. You go to your title company. So even if we do not do it, if it's First American, we can reissue a policy, which will be an update as well.
Okay.
So it'll have the new.
I have a disconnect. So let's say the fraud happens.
Mhm.
Let's say it's on my property, just to simplify things. I buy a property, it's free and clear, I've owned it for however many years. My title insurance only covers me from the day that I purchased it back. So if somebody commits fraud after that fact, how is that handled?
So that is where you can still file a claim. So that is then where the underwriter is going to take into fact everything that they can gather from the title company and then forward. But so also though that's where you do the reissue. So I would suggest.
Well, no, there's no reason. I
Oh,
never
right.
changed the deed. I'm just going real simple so that
Okay.
because I don't understand. I own the property, deed fraud takes place, somebody else buys the property and closes escrow.
Mhm.
I don't have any insurance on that because I'm only insured from the time I bought it backwards. So who pays for my loss now or my legal fees for me to get my property back?
Well,
That's
that
the
you
question.
have to get a lawyer for.
Okay, so there's no title
So-
coverage moving once you own the
Once
property.
you own the property,
Against
there
mortgage.
is no-
Against mortgage fraud?
So that's where you have to take it to your underwriter.
What would compel an underwriter to pay out a claim on something after what they've insured? You've only title insured the past. I don't see
Right.
any title insurer, examiner, or anybody that's gonna pay a claim for the future. I don't see that ever happening.
I have not seen that happen, but I have talked to my underwriter and he does say that it's just a case to case basis. Unfortunately, I can't answer the whole question for you because it's more of a
Self-insured.
lawyer or underwriter.
Probably if the same underwriter sold it is where they're gonna.
They would go on
Right,
that.
they would go on that, yeah.
Or same title insurance company that insured the fraudulent purchase, of course, they're gonna pay out.
Right.
Correct.
But I wasn't referring to that. I'm
Oh,
thinking
yeah.
he is, obviously, so my protection may be because they insured the owner of the property, which is technically me, even though they thought they insured Mr. Fraudulent. So that would be my protection,
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
although I wasn't the one to pay for the policy.
So I'm wrong on using that on the title.
There you go. I did.
One thing I understood was,
I'm just gonna go back to that before we get off. So if I transfer a house I own to an LLC, to a trust, I have no coverage anymore because I changed title?
Correct. So the best thing to do is to do a reissue of a policy. Sometimes it's just a basic endorsement. And it's just to add the new owner, or if you changed it, it's best to do an endorsement, which is like $100. And it gives you your, it changes that policy into your new like LLC or trust.
Nothing else this class was valuable.
for that, right?
Off topic,
Yeah, with those losses, I could buy another. It was amazing and appreciated.
Off topic, but related to that, also your insurance. Make sure you're updating your insurance with the new trust name, the LLC, whatever you're putting in,
Right.
because place burns down, something happens. You may not have, you might have a coverage issue there too, so.
I have a question since we're on the whole title thing. What if you have an investor that buys a new construction and the new construction is just a special warranty deed? What would you recommend there
They
for that
can,
investor?
they can upgrade it,
They can
correct?
upgrade it?
Yes.
We have that come up.
Correct.
You need to,
Okay.
because you're covered on the new bill. You wouldn't need that unless you change title.
Unless you change title.
So what is, like, generally speaking, what is like the cost difference, one, to record those endorsements, or two, to upgrade title policy?
So like the reissue of a policy usually is a percentage of the full value, like new value of the house. Doing a simple endorsement, basically just to change from an individual to LLC or trust, is like $100 endorsement.
Just give an idea.
That's recording fees, I'm guessing.
You don't record
We
endorsements.
don't record endorsements. The only time you would get the recording fee is if you want us to record a deed from yourself to the LLC or trust and then do the endorsement. Otherwise,
You can do that, right?
if you're changing it, we would need to record a deed and then do the endorsement.
In your case, it's already done.
Well, it's gonna change the pay.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah. My phone calls after this will be to get my property. Yeah, I think we did get that done too. So is it the Eagle policy? What is the difference in the policies? There's the standard and
The
then
Eagle policy and the standard. And your standard basically gets the exceptions taken away. So any easement, if there are restrictions on vacant land, there's usually no restriction. So your Eagle is your homeowners, that covers all of your easements, anything from your restrictions, anything on the land itself. The basic is it's just like it is basic. You'll have your deeds of trust, and any kind of judgments are legal.
So historical.
Okay. And is that something where we should be recommending to our buyers of land?
So I think that when people buy vacant land, you get your basic policy. When they have their house built, I think they should upgrade it to your homeowner's policy.
Okay.
Did you do that, Jody?
I guess so.
Well, we're buying breakfast for, right?
You're on?
It was quite interesting. We're all pretty intelligent people, and everybody in here has got some tenure under them. And we're learning very simple things that seem very clear right now. If
We've never
we don't
considered
know,
before.
if we don't know these things, we think the public knows. They know absolutely nothing. So where we can shine is to tell. Like, I'm thinking in my mind, going to Blackstone and every vacant lot in there, most more free and clear,
Reaching out to.
sending them a letter, and just put it on Facebook or whatever, sending them a letter and specifically touching them with pertinent information. And think about that, all your little farm areas, you can do that. And you can start to educate one-on-one by mail. You know what I mean? Real simple.
Yeah.
Just gave me such a brilliant idea. Thank you for that,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, oh God, postcards, so you know, my farm area.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the homes are owned free and clear and they're vacation homes.
And the more we get the word out, we need to be the voice of this, you know, what I mean, title companies, the real estate community, we need to be the voice of it so that one, it's a service and obviously, but just to get the word out, the general public. I mean, there's been some news stories, but you know, they don't go into depth like these kind of tips, you know what I mean? They just cover, oh my gosh, this is happening, you know, and they don't really
This is a great new video.
Mhm.
Now deed fraud has evolved into just impersonation.
And so, you know, we can take the key tips and again, that's why I kind of wanted to do this today was because of the things that have evolved. As even
It's
though
technically still deed fraud. And even deed fraud required somebody to impersonate another person and commit fraud.
Right.
But where this takes it somewhere else is they now don't commit deed fraud and then sell it. Now they sell it and simultaneously commit deed fraud. That's the difference, right? Would that be good? No?
Yeah.
These are smart.
they are.
They would just use their bad for good.
So
Right?
Everybody needs to put caught in the arm of good. I have Superman and superheroes in my cabin, in my office. Sometimes that helps me overcome this.
Behind on some of the technology, what I understand is like you can literally, from what I hear, and I don't know anything about how to get there, how you do it, but on the dark web, however that you get to that, they're actually selling this as a package. Like people are buying this in other countries and just learning how to do this,
I'll
and
give you
they package it
something
up in
scary.
color. And they have scripts, they know how to like, they know, they have a checklist for that, like I'm understanding this.
You want to hear scary?
I'm scary.
I used to have desktop recording ability
Mhm.
at my house when I used to record deeds, you know, for buying trustee sales.
Mhm.
So if I were evil, or if somebody were evil and obtained desktop recording ability, literally, I mean, the money would be like stupid.
It's
Sorry, I didn't mean to give you
Well,
any
it's
ideas. I'm
your-
sure this video-
where the county.
My
Well,
husband
there's-
has to make sure that he doesn't go.
Well, is your desktop recording?
Maricopa County.
Maricopa directly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
yeah. Anybody can set up an account with the county recorder and record right from your desk.
Don't give them the either.
You have to, yeah, you have to still, yeah, but it is, you can do it.
That was 15.
Mondays.
Do you guys have any situations from the title side you want to share, other than what I've seen?
I had shared one at the last monthly meeting, but I know some of you guys weren't there, so I'll share this one again.
Okay.
And it's more of a call me kind of a thing, or call anybody. So the one that I had just recently was the vacant land, and the agent that was being communicated by the seller went and was trying to list this property, and she just said she started getting these bad feelings. He didn't care about the sales price. He wanted to use an online title company. He was living in Puerto Rico, had a German accent. Everything had to be done via DocuSign, DigiSign. Communication was through the WhatsApp, no phone numbers or emails. So she just had this bad feeling. So what she did was she went and looked at who did the last deed, and that was us. So she called me, and I just so happened to remember these clients because they were talking. I remember they had like a ranch and all of this. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. She said, well, did they have a German accent? I said, no, they did not. She said, okay, well, can you find out if they're trying to sell their land or somebody's trying to sell their land for them? I was like, of course. I went into their file, called them up. They were like, nope, I'm not trying to sell my land. Let me ask you these two questions. He was asking me. Did the guy say he's from Puerto Rico and did he have a German accent? I said, yep, that is exactly what the agent just told me. And she said, this is actually the one from this recording document. She said, this is our third time that somebody has tried to sell their land. So what I'm kind of getting at here is if you have those gut feelings of like, this just doesn't seem right, go look at the last deed that was recorded, call that title company, ask them, like Shannon was saying, can you reach out to the sellers and ask if they are trying to in fact sell their land?
You know, that is the black market right there. If they're selling that information,
Yep,
on to the next one, right?
exactly.
And I think, thinking through just during this discussion, I've been thinking, what are the takeaways? Because I've already got a mental note of the title stuff, some of those things, because I need to do them. But if thinking through the fact that when we did kind of throw up the flag and say, hey, we have a little bit of a concern on ownership, we're doing some research, we're gonna pause this listing. Maybe taking that further at the very beginning, saying, hey, there's a lot of deed fraud going on. We're gonna be taking these extra measures. So please, it might be a slower process to get you on the market. And just see if that even causes them to disappear or not, potentially. I don't know, but you know what I mean? At least then it's just that initial, I'm just doing my extra due diligence because of the market and the things that are happening. And see if maybe that pushes them off. But
I know if I was selling, I have vacant land. If I was selling my vacant land and somebody said that to me, I'd be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking that extra
Because
precaution.
it's
I may get upset.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what the steps are, just that I'm going to be doing extra.
Better yet, if you weren't planning on selling that,
Exactly. Yeah, I would appreciate that extra little step that the agents are taking.
Sarah, I see a couple notes in the chat. Is that anything we need to address for anybody? Any questions online?
Nope, they were just asking if you're gonna send the handouts, which you are already planning to do that.
Yes, and the ones, the seller impersonation, Fred, has already been sent a couple times, but I'll resend it to everybody to be safe. Any thoughts or questions? Otherwise, we're done a little bit early, but anything else you guys are seeing or hearing or doing out there? Those are the examples I've just recently run into.
One of the things I just wanted to mention really quick is if you do come into a case of potential deed fraud, I would recommend contacting the big title companies. All title companies insure with somebody. We insure through First American, you've got Fidelity, you've got Stewart, Old Republic. Calling those title companies, having your sellers call those title companies and say to them, there's potential deed fraud on my land, on my home. Can you please put this parcel number on your red flag list? So if somebody does go to sell that piece of property, like Yvonne was saying, we're all pulling, basically from the same system. They're going to flag that and it's going to come up with potential deed fraud. And it might take a little bit of extra legwork for your clients, but isn't it worth it? You call up 5, 6 companies, you're more than willing to do it. It's just a matter of, you call me and I would be like, nope, it's done. I'm going to call First American. They have a whole department on it. I send an email to First American and bam, it's on there. So anybody that insures through First American that goes and pulls title on that property, that's going to come up as potential deed fraud, whatever title company you're at.
And to piggyback on that, MLS doesn't really want to take I don't want to say they don't want to take a stand, but they don't have a way to control a lot of this stuff. However, what we've started doing, and as the broker community we've been talking about, and we did, I know on the couple that we've had, is putting a note in the private remarks of that old listing when you take it off the market, when we found out these were fraud or potential situations, and just saying, please call listing agents, potential fraud, or somehow flagging it that way. So the next agent maybe will hopefully, again, like the one looked at that, but in this case, they actually see that there's a potential fraud, and that might follow it a little
title
bit.
question. Is there still a general title plant that is shared by all the major title insurers here?
So we use a system, a search system, data trace.
So there was a title plant that was originated years ago by
Right.
the big four back. Is
Right.
that still in play?
That is not.
It's not in play
No.
anymore? So that's gone?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think Canal has it, don't they? Don't they have a title plant like everybody uses?
It's
For,
not technically a title plant. It was a joint effort by the main.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure if Vanilla has.
Like terminology might have been bad, but.
That's what I know.
She was a minute.
Any questions, you guys? Any situations you've had that you're maybe thinking back now, might have had concern about, anything like that at all? I mean, we're done a little bit early, but
This was informative.
What I'll do is I'll try to kind of compile all the like key points we've talked about and the new things we've learned and send that out with these flyers to everybody. And maybe some suggested language for like that initial contact about what you could say to that person who's contacting you to list these properties about extra measures we're taking. Just see if that helps.
Like you said, just sitting in the Zoom call even.
Yeah.
See, if they won't do it, then you're like.
Yeah.
Well, that's my public, that's how I do things,
And
you know?
It helps, but I mean, I've heard of situations where they'll say, okay.
Yeah.
And they're providing ID that's fake,
Yeah.
that looks like them. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's tough, but it's still, I mean, anything we do to help keep pushing back on them to show them we're digging and we're verifying, I think
Yeah.
it helps.
If you do a Zoom in that type of situation, make sure that recording is on,
Yeah.
Right.
so that even though they have a fake ID, but now we have a human that is now perjuring himself
Right.
online.
That's a good idea.
Can I ask another question here? When you recorded deed of trust, a note with deed of trust, obviously the deed of trust recorded, the note is not.
Right.
So do all deeds of trust have to have the dollar amount of what the principal amount is?
If anybody wants to stay on and have nothing better to do today, we're gonna be watching the property report. It's 10 o'clock, Christine. If I just
Oh,
do
really?
if I just do
Oh.
it.
Yesterday.
Hey, Shannon.
Yep.
So as a person committing fraud, what do they look for to target? Paid in cash, no mortgage, what else? And then can you-
Out of state owners,
Individual owners,
individual owners,
Mhm.
okay.
not, they don't want LLPs, trusts, because that's.
My documentation is recorded already.
Exactly, yeah,
Beneficiaries are recorded, so
yeah,
take that.
Right,
And realtors willing to do the job.
yeah, yeah. They're, they wanna sell it quick, they want no signs sometimes, it's vacant, it's an individual owner, free and clear. Which is why Arizona, I mean, it's happening across the country. And it's happening to houses, and I've heard of a rental situation. But land, obviously in Arizona is a big target, because there's just a lot of it here. And a lot of people that have owned land in Tonopah for 30 years and haven't been there and haven't been back, you know.
the Whispering
Arizona
Ranch.
Right. It's been an issue here.
What is Whispering Ranch?
Whispering Ranch is, if you
Gary?
take Grand Avenue to Jomac,
Yeah,
and then you go out about 20 miles, and then you take Patton, sorry,
Yeah, there it is, but what's the relevance to Whispering and why you mentioned it?
nobody's out there, really. And anybody that is really out there, they don't want to know anybody else out there.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
just
Doing something, they're doing it, and they don't even want it, they're just look
lot
the
of
other
drugs
way.
and shops.
just
Okay.
take a drive, out there. When you
Yeah.
stumble upon a little community, they all come out and look at you. So
Yeah.
Bring your
They all got
gun.
their shotguns, shoulders.
The other issue with Spring Ranch. Okay, and this is going back to the 70s. The gentleman who was out there selling it was selling 5-acre parcels. They were insured by Stewart Title with no ingress and egress. So you gotta be really, really, really careful that you're not landlocked, because there are still landlocked parcels out there, right, Jody?
Yes, they are.
Yes, it was very interesting, and it was sold for $500.
Yep.
$50 down in payments.
Wow.
My in-laws started building on a wrong parcel, and nobody told them for like a year and a half.
Oh my gosh.
It's a scary area.
Right?
There's something about this area. I'm not familiar.
I live close to Wickenburg, close to Wickenburg. So that's how I know about it. Like I said, my ex-husband, his family lived out there, and he was born and raised. And it was different. And like, I couldn't get out there without like somebody guiding me. He was like, you turn right at this bush, and you turn left at that. And you know,
Don't go after rain.
no.
And don't go after
I
her.
remember public.
Right.
Yes.
That
With the power support, yeah.
It's in the middle of nowhere, except there's something, a neighboring parcel right next to it and across the street. And I had my sister take pictures on this listing, she's a photographer. I would not let her go to the opposite corner of the parcel by herself. Just because it was that. sketchy.
Oh, it's sketchy out there. Oh, yeah.
And it was obviously day and everything else, but it's.
But you can buy
You'll dissipate.
cheap land.
And you need four-wheel drive.
It's easy, you know, for somebody to go and say, oh, I own 5 acres, especially people from out of state. It's easy for
Yeah.
somebody to just go and list out there and have no idea, because people aren't checking on their land out there.
That's why I always ask people, I was like, are you familiar with the square ranch? Go take a look.
Yeah.
Isn't that new interstate on that, on the west side of that on now?
Yeah,
So,
that,
With Spring Ranch is gonna be on.
And that's what I tell them too, is the infrastructure. It's gonna change drastically, so.
Yeah.
If they could get some electric.
Water. So much behind them. So we haven't even. About our land and has a lot of experience.
Like I get home and I'm like, I don't do because I don't want to get ready, especially now we have all.
If it's over 10,000. Like, yeah, I don't have time.
I just. People don't, the people that are looking at land don't have a lot of discussion, you know what I mean, like, they just think, oh, I'm gonna build a whole, like, hey, because there's a lot. You may not even be able to put a well in, you know what I mean, like, you know.
Yeah.
It was a lot of pieces of being pushed or. And I get the pushback. I'm not gonna have a box. Well, things can happen. Someone could dump on that land, right? At a fire, someone could,
Right.
well, equipment damage it. Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen now that. People transition about.
It's like, music, I don't know, start. That's what she likes. I know. I can't drive. So that's good. That's the salary. I can always reach out to you about one of my.
Hey, Shannon,
Yeah, just a moment. I'm gonna
Shannon,
go online asking a question.
we got, we have one more question in the chat. If you guys
What's that?
hear me, can you
Yeah.
repeat the large players, First American, and who else did you guys say?
Fidelity.
Fidelity, Republic, Stewart.
They're the ones that.
We call the big four, right?
The big four, yeah.
Those are the primary ones. Those are the.
Yeah, Chicago. Fidelity.
Say it again. We're having terrible audio with you guys. Stewart, Fidelity, First American, and who was the fourth?
Old
Old
Republic.
Republic.
Public. Okay, thank you.
You can email that out, you know.
Yeah, I can send that out in the notes as well. For everybody. Thank you guys for coming online. You can see me, I'm waving.
All right. Any other?
You.
Thank you guys. Take care. Have a good day.
All right.